I always figured life would shaft me eventually, but I never expected it to happen with my own wrench set as the homicide weapon. My name is Nick Granger, and I fix things for a living. Cars mostly, but I used to think I could fix my marriage too. Turns out some things are beyond repair, no matter how good your tools are. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was under the hood of a '98 Honda Civic, wrestling with a stubborn alternator, when my phone buzzed. Text from my wife Lana. "Working late again tonight, don't wait up." The thing is, I'd been getting that same text 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. Either Lana had suddenly become the most dedicated marketing executive in the history of corporate America, or something else was going on. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and called Big Mike over. Mike's been my best friend since high school, and he's got the kind of loyalty you can't buy and the kind of mouth that keeps things interesting. "Let me guess," Mike said, lighting up a cigarette despite the no smoking signs plastered all over the garage. "Princess Lana's got another emergency meeting with her laptop and a bottle of wine, something like that." I showed him the text. Mike squinted at the screen, then at me. "Nick, buddy, you know I love you like a brother, but you're dumber than a box of hammers if you think she's really at the office." The thought had crossed my mind. Hell, it had moved in and started paying rent. But there's a difference between suspecting your wife is cheating and actually doing something about it. The first one just makes you paranoid. The second one changes everything. That night, I sat in my recliner watching the Cubs lose to the Cardinals while nursing a beer that had gone warm an hour ago. Our house felt bigger when Lana wasn't in it, like her absence somehow expanded the walls. The place was nice enough. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, decent neighborhood where people still waved at each other. We'd bought it 12 years ago when we still talked about having more kids. Casey, our 19-year-old daughter, was away at college. She called every Sunday like clockwork, usually wanting to tell me about some professor who was changing her worldview or some boy who was changing her heart. I missed those calls more than I'd admit to anyone, including myself. Around midnight, I heard Lana's car in the driveway. I stayed in my chair, pretending to be asleep, and listened to her fumble with her keys. When she finally made it inside, she smelled like expensive perfume and something else I couldn't quite place. Something that definitely wasn't the stale coffee and copy machine toner you'd expect from a late night at the office. "How was work?" I asked without opening my eyes. She jumped a little. "Oh, you scared me. It was fine. Long presentation for the Morrison account." Morrison account. I filed that away for later. The next morning, Lana was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting. Coffee's made. Love you." The coffee was terrible. Lana had always been a lousy cook, but her coffee used to be decent. Now it tasted like she'd made it with 1 foot already out the door. I got to the garage early and spent the first hour of my day doing something I never thought I'd do. I looked up Lana's company directory online. Morrison account. No such thing, at least not according to their client list. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Mike said when he showed up at 8. "Worse, I think someone stole my wife." Mike poured himself coffee from the pot we kept in the office and settled into the folding chair we'd salvaged from a church rummage sale. "Okay, talk to me. What's going on?" I told him about the Morrison account that didn't exist, about the perfume and the late nights and the way Lana had started doing her hair different. Little things that added up to something big and ugly. "You want me to follow her?" Mike asked. "Oh, I want to pretend this isn't happening." "Yeah, well, wanting and getting are 2 different animals. You need to know what you're dealing with." That afternoon, while I was replacing brake pads on a Ford Explorer, my phone rang, unknown number. "Is this Nick Granger?" The voice was young, female, nervous. "Yeah, who's this?" This is going to sound weird, but I work at the Marriott downtown, in the bar, and I think your wife comes in here sometimes." My hands stopped working. The wrench I'd been holding felt suddenly heavy. "Why are you calling me?" "Because she's here right now, and she's not alone. And I have a husband too, you know? I'd want someone to tell me." The Marriott was 15 minutes from the garage. I made it in 8. I found them in a corner booth, sharing a bottle of wine and what looked like a very intimate conversation. Lana was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. The man across from her was tall, probably in his late 30s, with the kind of carefully styled hair that screamed expensive salon. He was wearing a suit that cost more than I made in a month. They were holding hands across the table. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, watching my wife laugh at something this stranger said. She threw her head back the way she used to when I told her jokes, back when I could still make her laugh. Then she saw me. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. The man, I'd learn later his name was Eric McCall, followed her gaze and had the decency to look uncomfortable. I walked over to their table. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. "Hey, honey," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "How's that Morrison account coming along?" Lana opened her mouth, closed it, and opened it again. No sound came out. Eric cleared his throat. "You must be Nick. I'm Eric McCall. I work with Lana." He didn't offer to shake hands, which was probably smart. I wasn't feeling particularly friendly. "Funny thing about that Morrison account," I said, still looking at Lana. "Seems like it doesn't exist." "Nick," Lana finally found her voice, "I can explain. I bet you can. Question is, do I want to hear it?" The three of us sat there in silence for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a few seconds. The hotel bar buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses around us, but our little corner had gone quiet as a funeral. "We should talk," Lana said finally. "Yeah," I agreed. "We should, but not here, and not with him." I turned and walked away before either of them could respond. My hands were shaking by the time I got back to my truck, but it wasn't from anger. Not yet. It was from the terrible certainty that my life had just changed forever, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to change it back. The drive home was a blur of red lights and stop signs that I barely saw. I kept thinking about the way Lana had looked at Eric like he was the most interesting man in the world. When was the last time she'd looked at me like that? I couldn't remember. I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at the note she'd left that morning. "Love you," when she came home. "Nick, we need to talk. No argument here." She sat down across from me at the table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd helped Casey with homework, where we'd planned vacations and argued about money and dreamed about the future. "It's not what you think," she said. "Really? Because what I think is that my wife is having an affair with some guy from her office. Am I wrong?" Silence. "Am I wrong, Lana? It's complicated." "No, it's really not. Either you're sleeping with him or you're not." More silence. Then, "Yes." The word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Even though I'd seen them together, hearing her say it out loud made it real in a way that observation couldn't. "How long? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She looked on down at her hands. 3 months. 3 months. A quarter of a year. All those late nights, all those lies. All those times I'd kissed her goodbye in the morning while she was planning to betray me before lunch. "Do you love him?" This time the silence stretched so long, I thought she wasn't going to answer. "Yes." And there it was. The end of everything I'd thought I knew about my life. The next few days passed in a haze of awkward conversations and careful politeness. Lana moved into the guest bedroom temporarily, which we both knew was about as temporary as a tattoo. She started staying out later, coming home with that same guilty expression and expensive perfume smell. I threw myself into work, spending 12-hour days at the garage, and coming home exhausted enough to fall asleep without thinking too much. But thinking has a way of finding you anyway. Usually around 3 in the morning when the house is quiet and your brain decides it's time to replay every moment of your marriage and figure out where it all went wrong. Casey called on Thursday night, her usual Sunday schedule thrown off by midterm exams. "Hey, Dad, how are things?" "Fine, sweetheart. How's school?" "Brutal. I've got 3 papers due next week and a chemistry exam that's going to determine whether I graduate or spend the rest of my life asking people if they want fries with that." I laughed, and it felt good to laugh about something. "You'll be fine. You're the smartest person I know." "Smarter than Mom?" The question caught me off guard. Different kind of smart. Speaking of Mom, is she okay? I called her yesterday and she seemed, I don't know, distracted. I looked toward the guest bedroom where Lana was probably texting with Eric. "She's been working a lot lately." "Yeah, she mentioned that. Some big account or something." I almost told her right then. Almost said, "Your mother is having an affair and our marriage is falling apart and I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do about it." But you don't dump that kind of weight on your kid, especially when she's got exams to worry about. "She's fine, Casey. We're all fine." "Good. I was thinking about coming home for a weekend soon, maybe next month." "That would be great. I'd love to see you." After we hung up, I sat in my chair and thought about what it would be like to tell my daughter that her parents were getting divorced. The conversation played out in my head a dozen different ways, none of them good. Friday morning brought the first real snow of the season and a text from Lana. Going out with the girls tonight. Don't wait up. The girls, right. I called Mike. You busy tonight? I'm busy every night, but I'm also flexible. What's up? Feel like doing some surveillance? Now you're talking my language. We met at Murphy's Pub, a dive bar 3 blocks from the Marriott. Mike had borrowed his cousin's beat-up Camry, something inconspicuous enough to blend in with downtown traffic. We parked across the street from the hotel and waited. This feels like something out of a movie, Mike said, adjusting the rear-view mirror. Yeah, except in the movies, the guy usually gets the girl back in the end. Who says you won't? I gave him a look. Okay, point taken. But maybe you don't want her back. Maybe you just want to know what you're dealing with so you can figure out what comes next. At 7:30, Lana's silver Accord pulled into the hotel parking garage. 5 minutes later, she walked into the lobby wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. She looked beautiful, which somehow made everything worse. Eric was waiting for her by the elevators. Well, there's your answer, Mike said. We followed them at a distance as they walked to the hotel restaurant. Through the windows, we could see them being seated at a table for 2. They ordered wine. They held hands. They looked like a couple celebrating an anniversary. You want to go in there? Mike asked. And do what? I don't know. Make a scene, throw a drink, act like a wronged husband. I did that already. It didn't change anything. We sat in the car for 2 hours, watching my wife have dinner with another man. Around 10 o'clock, they got up from their table and walked toward the elevators again. This time, they didn't come back down. That's enough, I said. Mike started the car. What now? Now I go home and pretend I spent the evening watching television. That's it? What else is there? I don't know, but sitting around feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to solve anything. He was right, but I didn't know what would. I'd never been in this situation before. I'd never had to figure out how to handle betrayal on this scale. When I got home, the house was dark, except for the porch light Lana had left on. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time, looking at the windows of the house where I'd lived for 12 years. It looked the same as always, but it felt different now. Like a place I was visiting instead of a place I belonged. I was still sitting there when Lana came home at midnight. She parked next to me and got out of her car, looking surprised to see me. Nick, what are you doing out here? Thinking. She walked over to my truck. Even in the dim light, I could see that her hair was messed up and her lipstick was gone. About what? About us, about what happens next. She looked down at her hands. I've been thinking about that too. And I think we should separate, officially. There it was, the words I'd been expecting but hoping I wouldn't hear. For how long? I don't know, until we figure things out. You mean until you figure out whether you want to be with him instead of me? She didn't deny it. Where will you go? Eric has a place downtown. He said I could stay there for a while. How convenient. Nick, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than it has to be? I got out of the truck and faced her across the driveway. My wife is leaving me for another man, and you're worried about me making it hard? I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now you're choosing him over me. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You met someone else, you decided you liked him better, and now you're trading up. It's the oldest story in the world. She started crying then, which should have made me feel bad, but somehow made me angrier instead. I'm sorry, Nick, I really am. Sorry doesn't fix anything. I know. We stood there in the cold, 2 people who'd promised to love each other forever, trying to figure out how to say goodbye. When? I asked finally. This weekend. I'll pack some things and go. What about Casey? We'll tell her together. When she comes home for Thanksgiving, she's going to be devastated. I know. Another silence. Longer this time. I should go inside, Lana said finally. Yeah, you should. I watched her walk to the front door, fumble with her keys, and disappear into the house. Then I got back in my truck and drove around town for an hour, not going anywhere in particular and just moving because sitting still felt impossible. When I finally went inside, Lana was already in the guest bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her on the phone, talking in low tones to someone who wasn't me. I went to our bedroom. My bedroom now, I supposed, and lay down fully clothed on top of the covers. I stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine what my life was going to look like without her in it. I couldn't picture it. After 18 years of marriage, Lana had become so much a part of my daily routine that her absence felt like missing a limb. How do you relearn how to be alone when you've forgotten what alone feels like? Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the familiar world in something new and cold. Saturday morning arrived gray and bitter, with the kind of wind that cuts through your jacket and reminds you that winter doesn't mess around in the Midwest. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table listening to Lana move around upstairs, packing her life into boxes. She'd been at it since dawn, carrying suitcases and bags down to her car, with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this for a while. Each trip past the kitchen window that felt like another small goodbye. Around noon, Eric showed up in his red BMW. I watched from the living room as he got out and walked to the front door like he owned the place. He was wearing designer jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Lana called from upstairs. I stayed where I was, listening to their muffled conversation in the hallway. After a few minutes, Eric came into the living room. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure whether he was welcome, which showed more sense than I'd given him credit for. "Nick," he said, "I wanted to talk to you. Did you? This is awkward for everyone, I want you to know that." I looked at him for a long moment. He was handsome in that generic corporate way that women seem to find attractive. Tall, well-groomed, probably drove his BMW to the gym every morning and ordered salads for lunch. "You want to know what I think is awkward?" I said. "What's awkward is having another man come to my house to help my wife move out so she can live with him. I understand you're angry. Do you? Because I don't think you understand anything at all." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Look, I didn't plan for this to happen, but you're not exactly broken up about it either." "No," he admitted, "I'm not." At least he was honest. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. "Planning what?" "Taking my wife." "I didn't take anyone. Lana made her own choice. After you convinced her to make it. I didn't have to convince her of anything. She was already unhappy." That hit harder than I expected. "Is that what she told you?" "She told me a lot of things." I stood up from my chair. Eric took a step backward. "Let me tell you something," I said. "I've been married to Lana for 18 years. I know her better than you ever will. And when this honeymoon phase wears off and you realize she's not the fantasy you built up in your head, she's going to do to you exactly what she's doing to me. Maybe, but I'll take that chance. Your funeral." Lana appeared in the doorway carrying the last of her boxes. "Are you two finished?" "We're finished," Eric said. I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, standing there with her new life packed up and ready to go. She was wearing makeup and jewelry, dressed up for moving day like it was some kind of celebration. "This is really what you want?" I asked her. "Yes, even after 18 years? Especially after 18 years. That stung. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means we've been going through the motions for a long time, Nick. Both of us. You know it's true." Maybe she was right. Maybe we had been coasting, taking each other for granted, letting the routine of marriage replace the reality of it. But that didn't mean it couldn't be fixed. "We could have tried counseling," I said. "Would you have gone?" I thought about it. "If you'd asked me to." I shouldn't have to ask, and I shouldn't have to compete with him for my own wife. Eric cleared his throat. "Maybe I should wait in the car." "Good idea," I said. He left, taking his expensive cologne and his uncomfortable presence with him. Lana and I stood there in our living room, surrounded by the furniture we'd picked out together and the pictures we'd taken over nearly 2 decades of shared life. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. "I should go," she said finally. "Yeah, you should." She picked up her box and started toward the door, then stopped. "Nick?" "What?" I hope you can forgive me someday." "I hope so too." She nodded and walked out of the house. A few minutes later, I heard her car start up, followed by the sound of Eric's BMW. Then they were gone and the house settled into a quiet that felt deeper than any silence I'd ever experienced. I stood at the living room window and watched the street where my neighbors were going about their Saturday routines. Mrs. Kaplan was raking leaves in her front yard. The Ruiz family was loading their kids into their minivan for some weekend adventure. Normal people living normal lives, blissfully unaware that my world had just collapsed. My phone buzzed. Text message from Mike. "How you holding up?" I typed back, "She's gone." "Want company?" "Not yet, but thanks. Call if you change your mind." I spent the rest of the day wandering through the house, noticing all the empty spaces where Lana's things used to be. The bathroom counter looked bare without her makeup and hair products. The closet felt cavernous with only my clothes hanging in it. Even the refrigerator seemed too empty, missing the yogurt and diet soda she'd always kept stocked. That evening, I called Casey. Hey, Dad, what's up? Just wanted to hear your voice. Ah, that's sweet. You sound weird, though. Everything okay? I almost told her then. Almost said that her mother had moved out and was living with another man, and that our family, as she'd known it, was over. But I couldn't find the words. Everything's fine, just missing you. I miss you too. Only a few more weeks until Thanksgiving break. Can't wait. After we hung up, I realized that Thanksgiving was going to be a disaster. How do you explain to your daughter that her mother won't be carving turkey with us this year because she's decided to start a new life with someone else? I opened a beer and sat down to watch television, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every commercial break reminded me of something Lana and I used to do together. Every sitcom couple looked impossibly happy compared to what we'd become. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and went out to the garage. I had a 1970 Mustang that I'd been restoring for the past 5 years, working on it whenever I needed to think or when the house felt too crowded. Now it felt like the only place that was still completely mine. I spent the next 3 hours sanding rust off the rear quarter panel, losing myself in the repetitive motion and the smell of metal and primer. By the time I finally went to bed, my hands were raw and my back ached, but my mind was quiet enough to let me sleep. The next morning brought a hangover I hadn't earned and a phone call I wasn't expecting. Is this Nick Granger? The voice was female, middle-aged, unfamiliar. Yeah, who's this? This is Janice Morrison. I'm Lana's friend. Janice. I knew the name. Lana had mentioned her 100 times over the years, usually in the context of some drama or gossip from work. I'd met her a few times at company parties, a sharp-tongued woman in her 40s who seemed to know everyone's business. What can I do for you, Janice? I wanted to call and tell you how sorry I am about what happened. Thanks. I also wanted you to know that not everyone thinks Lana did the right thing. That was interesting. No? Between you and me, Eric McCall is bad news. He's been through 3 marriages and has a reputation for going after other men's wives. Lana's not his first affair, and she won't be his last. Why are you telling me this? Because I like you, Nick. I always have. And because I think Lana's making a huge mistake. She's a grown woman. She can make her own choices. Yes, but that doesn't mean she should have to live with the consequences alone. I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but something in her tone made me pay attention. What do you know about Eric? I asked. More than I probably should. Are you interested in hearing it? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to hang up and pretend this conversation never happened. But a bigger part of me wanted to know exactly who my wife had left me for. I'm listening. Janice Morrison turned out to be a goldmine of information, and she seemed more than happy to share what she knew. We met for coffee at a diner on the south side of town, far enough from Lana's usual haunts that we wouldn't accidentally run into anyone we knew. Janice was exactly as I remembered her. Sharp-eyed, well-dressed, and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd made a career out of knowing other people's secrets. She ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. Eric McCall is a hunter, she said without preamble. He targets married women because they're vulnerable and usually too invested in keeping things quiet to cause him problems when he moves on. How do you know all this? Because I work in HR and because I pay attention. Eric's been with the company for 3 years, and in that time, he's had affairs with at least 4 married women that I know of. 2 of them ended up divorced. One of them had a nervous breakdown. The 4th one transferred to our Seattle office just to get away from him. I stirred sugar into my coffee and tried to process what she was telling me. What about Lana? How does she fit into his pattern? She's exactly his type. Attractive, successful, married to a man she thinks doesn't appreciate her anymore. Eric has a gift for making women feel special, like they're the most fascinating person he's ever met. And then he gets bored and moves on to the next one. How long does that usually take? 6 months, maybe 8? Just long enough for them to blow up their marriages and rearrange their lives around him. I thought about Lana, living in Eric's downtown condo, probably redecorating and buying new furniture and planning a future that would last exactly as long as his attention span. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Janice stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Because I've watched this happen too many times, and I'm tired of seeing good people get destroyed while Eric walks away without a scratch. What makes you think I'm good people? She smiled. Lana used to talk about you all the time. How hard you work, how much you love Casey, how you fix things around the house without being asked. She complained that you were boring, but boring isn't always bad. Boring means reliable. It means faithful. Not exciting enough, apparently. Excitement fades. Character doesn't. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the lunch crowd filter into the diner. Working people mostly, grabbing quick meals between shifts or meetings. People who understood that life was about showing up and doing your job and taking care of your family, not chasing fantasies. So what do you think I should do with this information? I asked. That's up to you. But if it were me, I'd want Eric to face some consequences for once. What kind of consequences? The kind that make him think twice before he ruins someone else's marriage. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. These are copies of some emails Eric sent to his previous targets. Company email, which means they're technically public record. I thought you might find them interesting. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Is this legal? It's not illegal. Eric used company resources to conduct personal business, which violates our IT policy. As an HR representative, I have the right to review any communications that might constitute workplace maltreatment. Is that what this is? Read the emails and decide for yourself. I spent that evening going through Eric's correspondence, and it was an education in manipulation. The man had a system. He started with professional admiration, moved on to personal interest, then gradually escalated to emotional closeness. He told each woman exactly what she wanted to hear, made each one feel like she was uniquely special, like he'd never met anyone who understood him the way she did. The emails to Lana followed the same pattern. You're wasted in that marriage, he'd written. A woman like you deserves someone who appreciates your intelligence, your ambition, your beauty. And later, I can't stop thinking about you. I know this is complicated, but some things are worth the risk. It was textbook seduction, and it had worked perfectly. But the most interesting emails were the ones he'd sent to his buddy Tom, a guy from his gym who apparently served as his wingman and confidant. Those emails told a different story entirely. The new target is hooked. Eric had written about Lana, should be ready to move in within a month. These suburban housewives are so predictable. And later, she's talking about leaving her husband. Perfect timing. I'm getting tired of the hotel routine anyway. I read that email 3 times, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. Target. Suburban housewife. Getting tired of the hotel routine. This wasn't a love story. It was a game, and Lana was just the latest player who didn't know she was being played. I called Mike. You sound different, he said after I'd filled him in on my conversation with Janice and the contents of Eric's emails. Different how? Like, you've got a plan. Maybe I do. Want to share it with the class? I looked at the emails spread across my kitchen table, evidence of Eric's systematic destruction of other people's lives. I'm thinking it's time Eric faced some consequences for his actions. What kind of consequences? The kind that hurt. Nick, buddy, I'm all for getting some payback, but you need to be smart about this. You can't just march into his office and punch him in the face. I'm not going to punch him. Good. I'm going to do something worse, which is I'm going to ruin him the same way he's been ruining other people. Mike was quiet for a moment. How? By making sure everyone knows exactly who Eric McCall really is. That sounds like it could get complicated. Good. Eric likes complicated. He should enjoy this. Over the next few days, I started putting together a plan. It wasn't elaborate or sophisticated. I'm a mechanic, not a spy, but it was thorough. I made copies of Eric's emails. I researched his previous sufferers and reached out to the ones I could find. I learned everything I could about his habits, his schedule, his weaknesses. Most importantly, I started documenting everything. Photos, emails, witness statements from the women he'd manipulated and discarded. I built a case against Eric McCall that would have made a prosecutor proud. The plan was simple. I was going to expose Eric for what he really was, and I was going to do it in a way that would destroy his reputation and his ability to hurt anyone else. But first, I had to make sure Lana would be caught in the blast radius. After all, she'd made her choice. Now she could live with the consequences. The annual Morrison and Associates holiday party was scheduled for the first Saturday in December. According to Janice, it was the social event of the year for the company, with clients, employees, and their families all gathering at the downtown Marriott Ballroom for an evening of networking, dinner, and dancing. It was also the perfect venue for what I had in mind. I spent 2 weeks preparing. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence or making plans. It was pretending to be the defeated husband everyone expected me to be. When people at the garage asked how I was handling the separation, I shrugged and said I was taking it one day at a time. When neighbors offered their sympathy, I thanked them and changed the subject. Meanwhile, I was putting together a presentation that would end Eric McCall's career and probably take Lana down with him. The key was getting inside the party. Janice solved that problem by volunteering to help with the event planning and adding my name to the guest list as her +1. Separated spouses are invited to bring dates, she explained. No one will think twice about it. Casey came home for Thanksgiving break the week before the party, and telling her about the separation was every bit as awful as I'd expected. She cried, she got angry, she blamed me, then she blamed Lana, then she blamed herself. It took 3 days of long conversations and careful explanations before she started to accept that sometimes marriages just end, and it's not anyone's fault. Except this time, it was someone's fault. It was Eric's fault for targeting my wife, and it was Lana's fault for letting him. "Are you going to be okay, Dad?" Casey asked on her last night home. "I'm going to be fine. Promise?" "Promise." She hugged me tight, and I realized that no matter what happened with Lana and Eric, I still had the most important thing in my life. I still had my daughter. The night of the party, I put on my best suit and drove downtown to the Marriott. The ballroom was decorated with white lights and silver tinsel, full of people in evening wear making small talk and drinking wine. I spotted Lana almost immediately. She was wearing a red dress I'd never seen before, standing next to Eric near the bar, laughing at something he'd said. She looked happy. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Janice found me near the entrance. "You clean up nice," she said. "Thanks. Is everything ready?" "The AV guy is a friend of mine. He'll switch over to your presentation when I give him the signal. And the timing? Right after dinner during the awards ceremony. Everyone will be paying attention and the lights will be dimmed so people focus on the screen." I nodded and tried to calm my nerves. I'd been planning this for weeks, but now that the moment was here, I felt like I might throw up. "You sure about this?" Janice asked. "Too late to back out now." "It's never too late. We could just enjoy the party, have a few drinks, and pretend none of this ever happened." I looked across the room at Eric, who was telling some story that had Lana and 2 other women hanging on his every word. He was in his element, charming and confident, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. "No," I said, "it's time." The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and forced smiles. I sat at a table with Janice and some other company employees, making conversation about the weather and the football season, while my stomach churned with anticipation. Lana and Eric were seated at the head table with the other executives. Every time I looked in their direction, they seemed to be whispering to each other or holding hands under the table. They looked like a couple in love, which made what I was about to do feel both more necessary and more cruel. Finally, the lights dimmed and the company president took the stage to begin the awards ceremony. He talked about the year's accomplishments, recognized outstanding employees, and thanked everyone for their hard work and dedication. "And now," he said, "I'd like to share a special presentation about teamwork and collaboration here at Morrison & Associates." That was Janice's cue. She caught the AV technician's eye and nodded. The screen behind the podium lit up with the title slide of my presentation, "The Real Eric McCall, A Study in Workplace Predation." The president looked confused. "I'm sorry, there seems to be some technical difficulty, but it was too late." The presentation was already moving to the next slide, which showed a professional headshot of Eric next to a quote from one of his emails. "These suburban housewives are so predictable." The room went quiet. I could see Eric at the head table, his face going pale as he realized what was happening. The next slide showed excerpts from his emails to various women, with their names blacked out but the content clearly visible. "You deserve someone who appreciates your intelligence." "I can't stop thinking about you." "Some things are worth the risk." Then came the emails to his friend Tom, showing Eric's real thoughts about his targets. "Should be ready to move in within a month." "Perfect timing. I'm getting tired of the hotel routine anyway." The room was dead silent now. I could see people turning to look at Eric, who was sitting frozen in his chair like a deer in headlights. The presentation continued with testimony from Eric's previous sufferers, their faces blurred but their stories clear and damning. Woman after woman describing the same pattern. The flattery, the seduction, the promises, and then the abandonment when Eric got bored and moved on to someone new. Finally, the screen showed a timeline of Eric's affairs, including dates, locations, and outcomes. 3 divorces, 1 nervous breakdown, 2 women who'd left the company. And at the end of the timeline, a photo of Eric and Lana at the hotel bar with the caption, "Current target, Lana Granger." That's when Lana stood up from the head table and ran out of the room. Eric tried to follow her, but the company president grabbed his arm. "Mr. McCall, I think you need to stay right where you are." The lights came up and suddenly everyone was talking at once. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably to record what happened next or share the story on social media. The president was conferring with other executives while Eric sat at the head table looking like he wanted to disappear. Janice appeared at my elbow. "Well," she said, "that went better than expected. Is it over? For Eric? Oh, yes. He'll be fired before the weekend, and word of this will spread through the industry like wildfire. He'll be lucky to find work selling insurance in another state. And Lana? That's between you and her." I looked toward the door where Lana had disappeared. Part of me wanted to go after her to see if she was okay, to try to explain why I'd done what I'd done, but a bigger part of me knew that conversation would have to wait. "I should go," I said. Probably a good idea. Things are about to get very unpleasant for anyone associated with Eric." I made my way through the crowd toward the exit, ignoring the stares and whispered conversations that followed me. In the hotel lobby, I found Lana sitting on a couch near the windows, still in her red dress, but with her makeup smeared and her composure completely gone. "How could you do that to me?" she asked when she saw me. "I didn't do it to you, I did it to him. You humiliated me in front of everyone I work with. You humiliated yourself when you chose to have an affair with a man who sees you as a conquest instead of a person." She started crying again. "You don't understand. I love him." "No, you don't. You love the way he made you feel. But that feeling was based on lies, Lana. Everything he told you, he's told to other women. Everything he promised you, he's promised to other women. You weren't special to him. You were just convenient." "You're wrong. Read the emails. He called you predictable. He said he was getting tired of the hotel routine. Does that sound like love to you?" She didn't answer, but her crying got harder. "I'm going home," I said. "When you're ready to have an honest conversation about what happens next, you know where to find me." I left her there in the hotel lobby and walked out into the December night. The snow was falling again, covering the city in something clean and white. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed with a text from Casey. "Saw the video online. Are you okay?" Video. Of course someone had recorded the whole thing. I texted back, "I'm fine. We'll talk tomorrow. Love you, Dad." "Love you too." I drove home through the quiet streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, probably watching movies or playing games or just enjoying each other's company. Normal families living normal lives, the kind of life I'd thought I had until a few months ago. But maybe normal was overrated. Maybe what I had now, the truth finally, was better than the lie I'd been living. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sat in my chair in the living room. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. My phone rang. It was Mike. "Saw the video," he said. "Holy cow, Nick. You really went nuclear. Had to be done. How do you feel?" I thought about it. How did I feel? Relieved, mostly. Like a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. "I feel like myself again," I said. "Good. That's good." "Yeah, it is." We talked for a few more minutes, but I was tired and ready for sleep. Real sleep. The kind that comes when you don't have any secrets left to keep. I went to bed in my own house, in my own room, with my own clear conscience. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything in something new. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Lawyers, probably, and difficult conversations with Casey, and the long process of figuring out what my life looked like now. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The truth, it turned out, was better than any revenge I could have planned.